Hello guys, thank you so much for inviting me to your Stockade meeting tonight. My name is Ranger Joel, and I wanted to share a little bit about a collection that I have. And I know that all of you as stockaders like to collect things. I remember when I was your age, I loved to collect things, and in fact my wife would tell you that I haven't grown out of liking to collect things. I still like to collect things. And what I like to collect are Native American artifacts. And I have a lot of different kinds of Native American artifacts, and I enjoy walking out in fields or walking in creeks on sandbars, looking on sandbars and different places to see if I can find things that can be anywhere from a few hundred years old to literally several thousand years old. And I have some artifacts that are very old. But anyway, what I wanted to say is that we enjoy our collections and we enjoy finding new things for our collection. But what I wanted to share from God's Word is that all of us have been given special gifts. And if you want to think about who we are as people, I have some gifts that perhaps one of your rangers don't have, or you don't have, or perhaps you have gifts that I don't have. And it's really important for each of us to remember that each of us have wonderful gifts that God has given to us, and we want to try to determine what those gifts are. In 1 Corinthians 12, verse 12, "For the body has many members and is one. And all the members of the body, though many, are one body. So it is with Christ." So what this verse is telling us is that we all have different gifts, and that these gifts that we have been given to us by God. And that these gifts are important for each of us to not only determine what gifts we have and have others help us determine those gifts, but also to use those gifts to reach out and to help other people. One of my favorite Psalms is Psalm 139, beginning with verse 14. "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them." So, guys, I want to share some of my artifacts with you, and you'll see right up front, some of them are really cool looking. Some of the spear points or arrowheads, some of the longer blades, they're pretty cool looking. Some of the other tools that I have were just as important to the Native Americans that used them, but they don't look as cool. But that doesn't mean that they weren't important to them. And in fact, we're going to be talking briefly about some of the different artifacts that I have and why some of them could have been used just as often or even more frequently than some of the arrowheads or spear points. So we see here, first of all, that we have some different artifacts, and notice in the top center, the Native Americans, they worshipped different kinds of animals. And a bird effigy means it's like a little charm or a good luck charm that they would carry around with them. And if you look really closely, you can kind of see it looks a little bit like the outline of a bird. And I wonder if any of you know what these two artifacts are right here. Notice that each of them have a hole drilled into them, and like a little bit of a basin or a place that something can be put. And on both of these are for starting fires. Remember how the Native Americans would use a small bow and use a stick, and through friction start a fire, and they would lay in these little basins. They would put some dry leaves or dry grass, and from that then they would be able to start a fire then. Where they didn't have matches like you and I have. Some of these here at the bottom, these are drills, and we have, our dad might have a drill that we can go out and it's electric, and or it has a power pack and it's electric, but the Native Americans didn't have that, and they had to do everything by making their stone implements by hand, and then going and using them. Just for instance, like these two fire starts, they used a hollow reed and they used sand, and they kept moving back and forth to drill that hole. It would take a very long time. Now, these artifacts up here, most of them do not look cool. They don't look like a neat arrowhead or a spear point, but each one of these are very, very important tools, and we're not going to spend a lot of time explaining what each of these tools are, but each of these are specialized tools that they would use in making different things. Over here we have a lot of scrapers, and these scrapers, once again, are not really cool looking, but these scrapers were used for making their clothes. When they shot a deer or a buffalo or something like that, then they would use these scrapers, and they would use them, and they would scrape on the hide to get all the fat and things like that off, so that they could it would make it more soft or supple, they call that, so that they could make clothing out of it. Now here are some very nice looking arrowheads, and you can see that some of them have very different kinds of bases, the bottoms, and some of them are larger, some of them are a little bit smaller, but they all were very, very important and to use for when they were hunting different kinds of animals or birds. So those are some of the more interesting, but not any more important, for instance, believe it or not, than this artifact right here. Now, this artifact might just look like a stone with a couple of chips out of it, and in reality, that's what it is. But this would have been a net sinker. I found this in a location where there was a Native American camp, and this would have likely taken less than a minute to chip or nap out of both sides, and they would hook this onto a net. So these net sinkers, to keep the net down in the water, deep in the water, so that they could catch fish with nets, were just as important to the Native Americans as these arrowheads or spear points. Even though they aren't as interesting looking, they were all important. And just in the same way, for each of us, we all have important responsibilities or gifts that God has given to us, and we want to use those gifts for sharing with others and helping other people. I wonder if any of you know what these two stones are. They're made out of two very different kinds of materials. These are a hoe, and they don't look like maybe some of you that have a garden and your mom sends you out to weed in the garden. These would be hafted, or it means put on a stick, or a heavy stick near the top, and then they would use this motion like this to scrape the dirt away. And you can see where it was chipped here on both sides, and then it was put on a hafted or placed on a stick and used some rawhide to hold it in place, and then it would have been used for gardening. And you can see here down at the bottom it's even chipped around, so it makes it a little sharper for when they were working in their garden. Over here we have something that's really important as well, and this is called a pestle. Do any of you know what a pestle is for? A pestle is for grinding. The Indians, Native Americans ate a lot of corn, but also they ate a lot of acorns. And they would use this pestle, and they would grind the corn or the acorns in this mortar. The mortar, as you can see, it has been hollowed out, and this is where they would place their corn or acorns, and then they would grind it down with the pestle. And here also is another grinding stone. You can see it's just as flat as your mom's iron, and all that black is called from end wear. And this is made so that it fits right in your hand. It even has a place for your thumb and for your fingers on the other side, and it's held like this, and then you grind your corn or your acorns like this. And this is a really nice wedge, and this chisel, and this chisel would have been used for when they were making dugout canoes or large wooden bowls, and they would put this in, and they would use a big heavy wooden mallet, and you can see how black that is from them hitting it with a wooden club, and this would dig out the wood so that they could make a bowl or a canoe. Now here's some other arrowheads as well, and some of these are from where I live. A lot of the spear points and arrowheads were made out of white quartz, and white quartz where you live might not be available at all. They would use whatever was available, but they also would quarry the different kinds of stone that they would make the points out of, and then they would trade them with other Native American tribes. And you can see there I have just some more of the Native American points, but they all have very different styles, and those different kinds of bases that are on some of them, they're actually from some of the same projectile points that are even in the same case could be literally thousands of years older than some of the other projectile points in the same case. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed me coming to your stockade tonight and sharing with you a little bit about my collection. And I would love to come and see your collection sometime. Whatever you have, I know some of you collect many different things, and perhaps you can ask your stockade ranger if you could have a night where, if you're meeting online, that each of you could have a few minutes to show your collection as part of the stockade meeting while you're having your meetings online. So just remember that God has created each of us, and we're all very, very valuable to God. But more importantly, we were created for a purpose, and that purpose is to use the gifts and abilities that God has given us to serve others. And I'm hoping your rangers will have a few added comments at the end about ways that each of you can learn a little bit more about maybe how you can be using your gifts to serve others. Have a great night, guys.